Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out tonight in what's now become our annual kick-off event, providing you all with a bit of insight into what we've got lined up for this year. And we'll also use this as a bit of an opportunity to reflect on the year that was. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today and pay my respects to our Indigenous elders past, present and emerging. I also want to welcome Minister for Western Sydney and Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Investment, and also Minister for Sport and Tourism, Mr Stuart Ayres, as well as the mayors of Cumberland and Canterbury Bankstown councillors Lisa Lake and Cal Ashford for joining us tonight. Before I start going through our program for 2022, I do want to recap on the last 12 months, a year that was pretty memorable for a lot of reasons. But despite the numerous challenges, I think it's one that we'll look back on as being quite critical when it comes to determining the impact of the long-term outlook for Greater Western Sydney. It's hard to have a conversation about 2021 without talking about COVID, and you're probably going to hear that a fair bit tonight. But I'm glad that we have the opportunity to thank those like Dr. Kerry Chant and the other frontline workers who have been so active in keeping our communities safe. While Dr. Chan and others, our teachers, our nurses, our emergency services, our workers who have kept us healthy, our systems functioning, our economies ticking over, most of our year, the dialogue was spent working with those in our network to not just understand these impacts and how they're being felt, but thinking about what comes next. The dialogue, like most of us, was forced to do things a little bit different. And despite the challenges we encountered, we recognised that these new settings and environments also provided a platform for change and for opportunity. And while we're talking about change, I think it's fair to give a special shout out to our chairman, our very own Christopher Brown, who's been on his own journey of discovery these past 12 months. He's unearthed his inner farmer. I'm pretty sure he wasn't able to tell the difference between a potato and a pumpkin a couple of years ago, but with the extra time he's spent at home during lockdown, he's really picked up some new skills, and everyone in the office is a little healthier for it. So there's certainly been no shortage of zucchinis and eggs and kale, lettuce and other forms of produce. So he's been quite busy, mate. Well done. Outside of farm life, though, Chris, myself and the team spent a good chunk of last year trying to understand how we could play a role in supporting the region's bounce back from the pandemic. And I have to acknowledge the CEO of South Western Sydney Local Health District, Amanda Larkin, not for the outstanding job she did, along with all the health districts, in managing the health crisis, but she gave us a bit of a kick along when we needed it as well. It was her push, actually, that led to us getting in touch with the Premier's office and the conversations I know that Christopher and his Chief of Staff, Bram Black, had during the height of lockdowns on how the dialogue can work with our communities to help rebuild socially and physically its links with government. And I think that's really provided a strong platform for the region to build from. Off the back of those conversations, and one of our proudest achievements in 2021 was seeing those discussions manifest into the $5 billion West Invest Fund, which has been designed to not just boost economic activity but support community wellbeing, provide better access to public space, grow our arts and cultural sectors, and equip our students and schools with the right equipment and infrastructure. I'd like to thank Amanda and the rest of our network for the ideas and the input they've proposed to date, and look forward to seeing how that initiative rolls out in 2022. Outside of West Invest, we also made a bit of a splash, pardon the pun, with our campaign to open up the rivers of Western Sydney for public use, and in collaboration with Sydney Water and other stakeholders raised awareness about the opportunities to clean and activate our waterways and foreshore areas in the region. The pandemic, and I'm sure we all saw the famous images of those at Bondi Beach during lockdown, highlighted the gulf between those in the east and the west and underlined the need for better access to more blue and green spaces for those that live on the other side of Anzac Bridge. We've been encouraged by the government's support for trying to address this, and Sydney Water's been a real driving force in this space. I want to acknowledge the work of the MD, Rox Rose, and the team behind its Urban Plunge initiative, who are out there now actively trying to source sites for swimming and recreational use in the region. So they're doing some work with councils, government, other stakeholders to find some solutions, which is great. Water wasn't the only advocacy win for the dialogue in 2021, and following the release of our Stuck in the Middle paper back in 2019, we were pleased to see one of our recommendations adopted in the shape of New South Wales Government's newly formed Planning Delivery Unit, which was basically tasked with getting on with the job of speeding up delivery within the Olympic Corridor, which is basically stretching from Strathfield through to Westmead. And speaking of getting on with the job, it was great to finally see construction of the powerhouse at Parramatta start. And I know there are a lot of people in this room, at least there's clapping, well done, who were in the trenches with us on that one, and have both publicly and privately spent a lot of time and effort to ensure this project got moving. So well done, Lisa and the board, for their great work. And of course, we look forward to seeing it come to life in a couple of years' time. Just down the road from the powerhouse site, we received some great news from the federal government that the ABC will be setting up base in Parramatta for 300 of its staff, something that we've been calling for some time. And our aim is to see more satellite centres located throughout the rest of the region, as well as a new SBS studio for Western Sydney. And leading up to this year's federal election, we're hopeful of hearing more about that one. Continuing on the federal theme, and we've had some ongoing conversations with government to help mitigate against flooding issues, particularly in the northwest. The funding of vital evacuation roads needs to be prioritised. The Castlereagh connection, for instance, linking parts of Blacktown, Penrith and the Blue Mountains is one such project that could really dramatically improve evacuation times, as well as reduce congestion. It's often been spoken about, but to date still remains unfunded. We've been buoyed by recent joint federal and state roads evacuation package, but we've seen through the recent floods and those of years past, the inevitability of future natural disasters is not something we can overlook or pass off as a coincidence. Responding to these signs through careful planning and investment is something we're going to need to continue to push for. So that's a very quick snapshot of some of the issues and the projects that we've led in the past 12 months. I don't have time tonight to go through all of them in detail, but it involved a lot of work in a lot of different areas, and certainly on the events and engagement side, I just wanted to share with you some of the activities we hosted. I also want to give a big rap to our events team, who you may not see a lot of on stage, but who do an absolutely stellar job making sure things like tonight can go off without a hitch. So I just want to give big thanks to Brett, Mariska, Emma for the amazing job they do. Well done, guys. So what's coming up in 2022? Well, we want to continue to argue loudly for the policies and investments that will deliver enhanced equity, amenity and economic growth. And I mentioned earlier the West Invest Fund, but through that, we think there are some real exciting opportunities to drive transformational change for the region. We've established a small West Invest reference group, and we'll continue to meet with key local government, community and business leaders over the course of 2022 to inform our advocacy and ensure these funds deliver maximum economic and social benefit. Rejuvenate our high streets, our town centres, and leverage the interest and willingness of the private sector to potentially supplement public sector funding. We're actually hosting the first of these sessions tomorrow with our online forum with the Department of Premier and Cabinet to talk through the West Invest guidelines that were released last week. Our reference panels, which is a new concept we're testing this year, are the dialogue's way of harnessing the expertise, experience and insight of our partners and broader network, many of you which are here with us tonight. We've set our sights on a number of key themes and topic areas for 2022, which in addition to West Invest will examine things like the circular economy in the Western Parkland City, the digital divide and social equity, the region's next generation of infrastructure projects, as well as how we can shape the future development of our local centres in the Central River City. We want to continue to work with partners to build off the work from last year aimed at ensuring our infrastructure investments deliver an increased social dividend. And we've already had some positive discussions with Transport for New South Wales on how we can start seeing some tangible actions. This year, for the first time and in partnership with New South Wales Treasury, we'll be hosting the Ignite GWS Summit, which will bring together the region's big business, bright minds and emerging enterprise to discuss the precincts, technologies, innovations and industries that will grow jobs and ignite an economy. Held in Parramatta in June, the event will look at what's required to grow the smart jobs of the future. It will look at the precincts and CBDs that will house the jobs of tomorrow, what makes them special and how the government is approaching precinct development. Importantly, it will explore how our sectors across all areas are equipping the region's next generation with the skills and knowledge to meet future industry demand. We've already got an impressive lineup of speakers, including our very own Minister for Enterprise and Investment, Minister Ayres, along with the New South Wales Treasurer and hopefully some of the city's sharpest minds, such as Atlassian and James Ruse-Hyes, and one of Christopher's favourites, Scott Farquhar, the Chair of Tesla and one-time Chalura local, Robin Denholm, the heads of our TAFE, universities, many of the Aerotropolis Foundation tenants, NEC, Vitex and others, and many more. So we're really excited about how that one's shaping up, so keep an eye for that one in June. Around the middle of the year, we'll also be hosting the Greater Western Sydney Health Forum, which has been made possible through the support of our local health districts, South Western, Western Sydney and Nepean Blue Mountains. It's a way of focusing attention on the role the region's health districts have played through the pandemic of 2021, the lessons learnt and the opportunities for our health districts to grow their capabilities and reputation, particularly in the areas of medical research, advanced manufacturing and digital services. We're still in the early stages of planning, but we'll be releasing more information about that one in the coming months. Our other major initiative for 2022, the Collaborative Leadership Program, or the CLP, as many have come to know it, is one that we're really looking forward to. And Faith, who you saw as a bundle of energy that's driving that one, has really put together a killer program. It's been a while coming, it's fair to say, and COVID certainly hasn't been kind. We've had to postpone it a few times, but it's finally locked in now for the end of May, and that's largely through the persistence of Faith, Catherine and our chairman, Christopher, who, despite the occasional setback, have refused to waver. For those that aren't aware, this is the warts and all, real life, real version of Western Sydney. The one that you can smell, touch and see, not just read about in a glossy 4-pager. This is our opportunity to connect 40 current and emerging leaders in the region, from partners of Big Four consultancy firms, CEOs of major corporations, senior executives in government, education and community, bunkered down in Western Sydney for 5 days. Not only will they get to swap stories and build what we hope will be a sustainable ongoing network, but they'll learn about leadership and communication from prominent professionals. They'll get to see what sits beneath the surface on some of the major infrastructure projects, as well as the community's voices and initiatives that often don't get the same type of attention. We've been fortunate to have the support of a number of our partners and advisors who've helped shape this program, including people like our patrons Lucy Turnbull and Professor Peter Shergold and Cameron Klein, and others like City of Sydney CEO Monica Baroni, who couldn't be more enthusiastic about being involved. After a few false starts, we really can't wait to get to the starting line in a couple of months. While I don't have the time tonight to go into the full suite of advocacy activities and campaigns we're running through in 2022, there's no denying that it is going to be a big year. If the previous years have been defined by its challenges, the natural disasters, the pandemic, then 2022 to me is about the opportunity. The pandemic in particular has provided us with a clear insight into the social, lifestyle and economic needs of the region. And over the next 12 months, the convergence of investment, policy and projects, and a little bit of politics, presents us with a unique opportunity to chart new territory. I'm not just talking about the $5 billion being poured into the region as part of West Invest, or the ongoing rollout of major projects such as Parramatta Light Rail, Campbelltown, Nepean, Liverpool and Westmead Hospital redevelopments, the metro lines being built, new schools and of course an airport and surrounding Aerotropolis coming out of the ground in the southwest. I'm talking about the opportunity to review and, if needed, reset the region's strategic direction. Being released over the next 12 months, and in addition to both a federal and a state election, where Western Sydney is expected to be once again a major focus, the New South Wales Government will provide updates on its major transport, planning, infrastructure and economic development plans, mechanisms which provide us with a chance to reconsider our priorities, to look over the horizon and reimagine the infrastructure and services we need in 20 or 30 years' time. In a post-COVID world, where we've already seen shifts in the way we live, work and move, this type of strategic planning has never been more relevant. Perhaps most telling, and one of the reasons why I think it's so important is because the change is coming. And for a lot of us, the full impact of these changes is yet to play out. Earlier this year, the Dialogue commissioned ID Profile, and I'm sure there are a few data heads in the room who know what these guys are about, but for those that aren't familiar with their work, they provide a lot of demographic planning and analytical data, quite a lot of it to councils in government, to help inform clients on their investment and planning decisions. So we commissioned them to provide an update on how population numbers for the region were tracking, a forecast that was based on assumptions before COVID hit and where it's at now as we look to emerge from the pandemic. The numbers tell a story. Prior to the pandemic, forecasts had Greater Western Sydney reaching a population of around 4.26 million within the next 20 years. Post-COVID, that number drops by nearly 600,000 to just under 3.68 million. That's a 40% decrease in expected population growth, which includes a significant decline in places like Parramatta, Blacktown and Bankstown. For a region which has been so reliant on steady and continued population growth as one of its main economic drivers, what does this mean for the future of jobs growth, for our small and medium businesses, for our ability to meet the skills needs of industry? What are the policies both federally and at a state level that are going to be required to address this shortfall? And how will it impact the way we approach and attract future investment? These are just a few of the things we're interested in working with our partners and broader network this year to better understand and to examine what this new dynamic means for the region and how we can continue to ensure that Western Sydney's growth agenda, which has been such a fundamental part of its identity, continues to fuel its success. As you can see, there's a fair bit going on, and obviously no shortage of questions and issues. Our hope is that you'll be able to help us come up with some possible answers. You'll find a more detailed outline of our program on your table, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, get in touch with myself and the team.